Alright guys, in this video we are going to learn how to replace the toner connector piece that is in the very back of the toner cartridge chamber. And when you take out the toner cartridges, if you look way back there, you're going to see a bunch of little springs and a couple gears. Kind of looks like this. Alright, so it's got a little cable connect right there. And basically on this particular machine I have a magenta toner that is only registering at 1% capacity, but it is probably more like 20%. So I know that there's an issue, and I've tried multiple different toner cartridges in there, and no matter what one I put in, it's constantly saying 1% capacity. So I'm guessing that this little connector there in the back for magenta is not reading correctly, or is bad, or something's going on with it. So I'm going to just go ahead and replace it. So to get started, we need to first take out all the toners. Make your life easier, just get all those out. And then we're going to take this top panel off. And to do that, we just got a couple screws here, and that'll come right off. Okay, so I have the panel off, and as you can see, we can look way back there, and each one of the toner unit compartments, and you have those little connectors for each one. This one right here is the one that we're going to be replacing, and to get to it, you can't just unscrew it from the back of the compartment. You have to take off one more little panel, and that's this plastic gray panel here, and it's held on by a screw here and a screw here. I should also mention that we need to take the panel off of the transfer belt blade, and that's held on by one screw right in this little tiny circle here. Just unscrew that one, and then this piece comes right off. Once you have that plate off, you need to pull the transfer blade out just a tiny bit, because there's going to be one more screw right there that's holding this piece on. Okay, and then once that's out, you have this piece actually comes apart in two pieces. This first comes out, but be careful because there's some cables right here in the corner. You don't want to snap those or do anything harmful to them. But once you get that out, then this piece comes right off. Okay? Now, the next part is to remove this piece right here, and this is where the toner drops in, and then it is fed into the drum unit. Okay, this plastic piece comes out, and it's held on just by this one little screw in there. Now, it's probably easier to take the drum unit out at this point to get easy access to it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to remove that toner connector, and we'll go from there. Alright, now there's actually one more screw that we need to take out, and that's right here in this little black case, and that's holding this unit onto the frame still. But before I do that, I actually want to come to the back and disconnect the actual connector. And to do that, you have one screw down here in the corner, and then you also have the cable connect. So we're going to remove those two, and then I'll show you the next step. Alright, now I've actually gone ahead and removed that last screw there. So at this point, with a little wiggle on the back, you can pull this right out, and you can see at the front it's already fallen off. And you just want to be careful, because as you can see, I just spilled a bunch of toner all over the place. So be careful with that. Use two hands, unlike me. And that piece comes out, and then what we're going to do is just slide this all the way forward. And now on the back here, there's a little tiny clip that is holding this rod on. Okay, so what you need to do is remove that clip, and then that rod will come right off the unit. Keep the clip though, because that's very important. That holds it all together. So I'm going to remove that, and we should be ready to put the new one in. Alright, so now I have my new connector piece, and I'm just going to thread that rod through that same hole. Be careful though, that little gray plastic piece that it goes through, you don't want to lose that either. That's going to keep everything in place and make sure it's working properly. So make sure that stays in, and I'm going to thread it back in, put everything back in place, and we'll test it out. Alright, so as you can see, I got the new one put on. That little gray piece slides in that hole, and then you have that little black clip that goes on the end of the rod to hold it all in place. I suggest that you do this as close to the front of the machine as possible. If you try doing this close to the back, you're bound to lose some of the pieces down in the little crevices and cracks. So once you have it on, you should be able to just slide it right on back and put it back in place right there. And once you do that, you can go ahead and put the connecting screw in the back right away, just to make sure that nothing moves around. Alright, as you can see, I have it back in place. I connected the cable connect, which was a little bit difficult because it's very tight space, but keep working at it, you'll get it. I have the screw holding it to the frame, and then up front, what I've done is I've put the toner connector unit, I guess, back in place, and also slid, whoops, and there it goes again. This is why you should always use two hands. Okay, so this is actually just going to slide up around the gear and then up against the frame. Okay, and just remember that that's held on by those two screws that I'm going to put in now once I set my phone down. So hold on one second. Alright, as you can see, I have a big mess here. But that's okay, I'm going to clean that up here in a minute. The next thing we need to do is to put the faceplate back on. And what I've done here is I've just gone ahead and removed all my drums as well, just to make my life a little bit easier. Probably should have told you to do that from the beginning, but I'm sure you may have figured that out already. So, again, this is going to go in, and remember that this other piece kind of has to bend behind it and on top of it and kind of close on the front once the other piece is in. So again, this takes two hands, so just play with it. It's going to go flush up against that frame, and you'll know when you get it. It's not too difficult. Just a matter of making sure that these little cables in here and whatnot are not getting pinched or pulled too hard. So just be careful, take your time, you'll get it. Alright, so there I have it on. Everything kind of fits in place. I haven't put any screws in yet, but remember we want to do this one over here first, and then we have this one down here, and then also in the hole over here. Alright, as you can see, I have the two front plates on. I got them all screwed in, and I've also reset the transfer blade. Okay guys, I'm going to try to attempt this again. This is the transfer belt blade, and what this does is scrapes off the excess toner from the transfer belt from the previous image and leaves the belt clean for the next image. One thing, if you notice a lot of horizontal streaks across your pages, usually very bright in color, that's a good indication that your transfer belt blade needs to be either replaced or just cleaned off and reset in its housing. This is probably, again, one of the most difficult things to put in the machine, because a couple things have to happen. If you look right here on the end of it, you see this little hole. Well, that hole has to line up with this little button down here at the very end of the transfer blade housing. At the same time, on the front of the transfer belt blade, right there, has this little pin, plastic pin, that has to line up with that little C-clamp at the front. Now, both of these have to happen at the same time, and again, it's quite difficult to do. You'll probably screw it up the first time, maybe even the second time. And what stinks about this is that you'll get it in there and you'll think you have it in there right, and then you'll put everything back in, you'll do a couple test prints, and you'll notice those streaks, or something's not right, the image is all washed out, messed up, and you got to take everything back out and reset it. So take your time. You're going to definitely need a light, and I have my clamp light here, and it's shining back there. It's best to take out all the drums and all the toners to do this, just so you get as much light back there as possible so you can see what you're doing. Okay, and when you first go to put the transfer belt blade into the housing, you might, or I recommend that it kind of go with the blue lever pointed in the upward direction and actually slightly to the left. That usually helps the best. And it's just going to go straight in. And you might notice right off the bat that when you go to put it in, something seems to be blocking it. Well, if you look at the top, you see this white little plastic piece here that's in the downward position that's kind of preventing it from going in. And if you actually just push that up, that's actually this little tab right here. You can push it down and you can push it up. Alright, so we have this pin in the upward position, and what I'm going to do, again, keeping the blue handle practically vertical, I'm going to slide this in. When I get right about all the way in, there's this little black tab on the side of the blade that's going to hit the metal frame of the machine. So when I get to that point, I'm just going to tilt it slightly to the left and just get it right behind there. And now the blade will go almost all the way in. So now if you look all the way to the back, you can see that I'm trying to line up that hole at the end of the blade with that little button on the back of the machine. Now at the same time, remember, I have to get the front plastic pin in that C-clamp. And what I like to do is first get the back button in place, and then what you can do is just slightly slide it back outward and then get the front plastic pin into the C-clamp, and that sits it in there really nice. So now we have the transfer blade in place, and remember, we still have to put on this little plastic piece on the front of it, and it goes just like that, and it's held on, just like this, and it's held on just by one screw, whoops, in this front hole here, okay? But before we put that on, I want to kind of test the blade, alright? And if you look real close, you can see the blade, and then you can see the transfer belt, the black piece, at the top. Now when I close the drum lever, you can see that it sits right on that blade. Opened up, close, open up, closed, okay? So sometimes doing that a few times right after you get it set in there is a good idea also, because if it's just out of place or out of alignment, just a tiny hair fraction, this will kind of jostle it into place, I guess. So again, we got this in, but now we're pretty much back to the beginning. So we're just going to throw the drums in, the toners in, and replace this top cover, and we should be good.